Hello, my dear students. Welcome to the class of Appreciating Prose. Today we are starting with Charles Lamb and his essay Dream Children a Reverie. Charles Lamb wrote personal essays and is known for his works Essays of Elia and Tales from Shakespeare. Personal essay, the short autobiographical non-fiction which had the characteristics of showing intimacy and spoke in a conversational manner. Charles Lamb wrote personal essays. He was born in 1775 in London. He was a famous English essayist, critic, poet, and I told you he wrote personal essays. So we need to look into his biographical details because his essays have his autobiographical details in it. His old connections, his family, his school life. Charles Lamb was born in England as a son of Mrs. Elizabeth Field and John Lamb. He was the youngest. And he had a sister 11 years elder than him, Mary Lamb, and he also had a brother, John. Even though Mary was 11 years elder than Charles Lamb, she and Lamb shared intimacy. Mary taught him to read at an early age of Lamb, and he read voraciously. And Lamb also helped Mary throughout her life. Charles Lamb was enrolled in 1782 in the Christ Hospital boarding school, and he speaks about his school life in Christ Hospital 35 years ago. This essay, I told you, he wrote about his childhood, or he had references of his childhood school life in his essays. And one of his, or some of his fondest childhood memories were his time associated with Mrs. Field, the grandmother of Lamb. She was a caretaker of a mansion of Mr. Plumer. The mansion was in Hertfordshire. And Mrs. Field was in charge of the mansion. The Plumer and family left to another house. Mrs. Field took care of the big mansion in Hertfordshire. And Charles visited Mrs. Field in that house, and he had fondest memories associated with Mrs. Field. And I told you about his school, Christ Hospital boarding school. There he formed a lifelong friendship with Coleridge, and there is also an event associated with the school that the person in charge, James Boyer, the school, one day lost his temper and he threw a book at Leigh Hunt and it knocked his teeth. This is an event associated with that school. And Charles Lamb had a stutter, Lamb, and that's all about his childhood. And in 1792, he was associated with British East India Company. And in 1792, he fell in love with Anne Simmons. And Miss Simmons appears in several essays under the name Alice M. Anne Simmons. But Simmons eventually married Silver Smith, another person, and Lamb called the failure of their affair as his great disappointment. Both Charles and Mary suffered a period of mental illness. And Mary Lamb's illness was particularly strong, and it led to a fatal event. In 1796, while preparing dinner, Mary became so angry with her apprentice, and her Mother Elizabeth began shouting at her, and in the outburst of that anger, Mary stabbed her mother. And Charles ran into the house soon after the murder and took the knife out of Mary's hand. And this was a really tragic incident happened in Charles Lamb's house. But Charles took the responsibility of Mary. Then Lamb used a large part of their meager income to keep his beloved sister in the private madhouse in Islington. So sister was in Islington in a madhouse, and Lamb helped her during her difficult times. And with the help of his friends, Lamb released his sister from the asylum. Otherwise, it would have a lifelong imprisonment for her. And he succeeded in release of his sister. Then, even though she had bouts of insanity, she and Charles Lamb together wrote Tales from Shakespeare for children. And Tales from Shakespeare was a retelling of Shakespeare's plays for children. Lamb's greatest achievements were his remarkable letters and the essays, which he wrote under the pseudonym Elia, E-L-I-A, and which is an anagram of Eli. What is anagram? That is rearrangement of letters, anagram. A-Li, A-L-I-E, lie. And he created Elia, E-L-I-A. And in 1819, at the age of 44, he fell in love with Fanny Kelly, who was an actress. But she refused him, and he died as a bachelor in 1834. See, such was the tragic incidents in Charles Lamb's life. Charles had mental issues. Mary also suffered with mental problems, and Mary stabbed her mother. So it was not a small thing. So the women who were associated with Lamb also refused to marry him. And his collected essays under the name Essays of Elia were published in 1823. Elia was the pen name of Lamb. He used this. And in 1833, a further collection called The Last Essays of Elia was published. So 1823 Essays of Elia and 1833 The Last Essays of Elia, 10 years gap. And regarding his style, so this is the overall biographical details about Lamb. And next we will move into the style, or regarding the characteristics of his writing. His style is highly personal. I told you he wrote personal essays, autobiographical details, a tone of conversational manner, intimacy. The writing is simple but not plain. Essays conjure up with humor. The essays had the humorous elements, but also pathos, that is sadness. Humor and sadness were mixed, and it evokes pity in the readers. His essays evokes pity in the readers, And he told about old acquaintances, old connections, or old contacts in his essays. And his essays also recalls scenes from childhood, that he will speak about his childhood memories, his time associated with his grandmother, Mrs. Field. And also the essays contain a sense of playfulness, that is lightheartedness, and also his fancy, that is he created certain things from his imagination, not really happened in their life, but he created certain events in his imagination. So his essays contain what all things: humor, pathos, old acquaintances, also playfulness, fancy. And beneath their whimsical surface or a playful nature, Lamb's essays, like the poems of Coleridge and Wordsworth, are an expression of the Romantic movement. Coleridge, Wordsworth, the famous Romantic poets. And Charles Lamb also had the romantic characteristics in his essays. What are the characteristics? Imagination, fancy, subjectivity, connections with nature. These characteristics were evident in the essays of Lamb. He wrote personal essays, don't forget that. Relaxed style, he focused colloquial voice. Then he also incorporated humor, personal recollection, whimsical nature. And he's been called as a shining star in the sky of English essay. He is a shining star. He's called the prince among English essayists. His essays are finest. Lamb's readers appreciate him for his wisdom, for his humanity, for his humor, for his pathos and the sweet temperament. And these are all the some of the details about Charles Lamb's essays: personal, conversational tone, good humored one, cheerful but also occasionally sad. Then old-fashioned style. It echoes old writing styles, long sentences. In the essay we are going to learn now, it contains long sentences, long and curious words. And Lamb also established a reputation in literary circles, and he contributed to many of the periodicals, London Magazine. And he was also a popular writer, and to intellectual gatherings, and included Charles Lamb, Coleridge, Southey, Leigh Hunt. And Lamb also contributed to William Godwin's Juvenile Library, and with his sister he contributed to Juvenile Library. And in 1807 Lamb and Mary published Tales from Shakespeare. And his another writing for children is Adventures of Ulysses. Okay, and he also wrote a lot of essay. The Londoner is a famous essay. On the Tragedies of Shakespeare, this is a famous essay. The South Sea House, it's a famous essay. And you have other writings also about of Charles Lamb. John Woodville is a tragedy he wrote. Then A Tale of Rosamund Grey and Old Blind Margaret is another work, is a novel, early novel of Lamb. Tale of Rosamund Grey and Old Blind Margaret. Blank Verse, it's another work. And some of his other essays are The Old Ventures of the Inner Temple, A Dissertation upon Roast Pig, then Poor Relations, then A Superannuated Man, which was his reaction to the retirement. In the last years, that is in 1827, his sister and Emma, the orphan they adopted, they moved to Edmonton, and there he died and he was buried. And the Memorials of Charles Lamb was published in 1848. His friends recorded it, and it spoke about his personality, the tragedies in his family, the responsibility Charles Lamb had, and his humor. His friends recorded all those things. And Dream Children a Reverie, this is the essay we need to study. It's a long essay, one paragraph. It's one paragraph and 4 pages. And we will start with the essay in the next class. So go through more details about Lamb, read about Lamb, and we will meet in the next class with Dream Children. We will start Dream Children a Reverie. Happy learning. Thank you.